Welcome to another episode of the Providence Friarcast, presented by PCBB1917.com, your home for Providence College basketball news, notes, and opinions. Now here's the founder of PCBB1917.com and your host, Mike Hopkins.
Welcome to another episode of the Providence Friarcast. I'm Mike Hopkins. Thanks for joining me. We're now 2 weeks into the 2021-2022 college basketball season, and the Providence Friars are 5-1 after winning their first 5 games, including the first game of the 2021 Legends Classic at the Prudential Center in Newark, and then falling against Virginia in the championship game 58-40 in one of the better defensive efforts I've seen in person. Yes, in person. First time I've watched a Providence College basketball game with my own 2 eyeballs since probably February of 2020. 3 games into the season, Providence was 3-0 for the first time since 2015-16, when that team won their first 3 games en route to 6 straight wins to start the campaign, including home wins over Harvard and Illinois and a neutral court victory over Arizona in the 2015 Wooden Legacy event in sunny California. And while Providence did not win that tournament that year, they lost to Michigan State, I believe, in the final of that year's Wooden Legacy. They also didn't win this year's Legends Classic at the Prudential Center, with the loss being at playing Virginia in the championship game on Tuesday night. But I think that if you look at it on the whole, the 2 games were successful in the sense that they beat Northwestern, which was the team they really needed to beat. Probably will be a better win than maybe some people expected. The Big Ten's a little soft this year, it looks like. And then, on top of that, they also got the better matchup that they were looking for. Because you really, with these MTE events, you're sort of at the mercy sometimes of the matchups and whether some team wins or loses on the other side of the bracket. In this case, Virginia and Georgia. Georgia probably not going to be very good this year. So, big boon to the schedule to even just have Virginia on it, to play them on a neutral. Especially if they end up putting things together, which, if they play anything like they did tonight the rest of the year, they're going to be very, very, very good. All in all, a pretty successful trip to Newark. 1-1 on the court, but a lot of things I think were learned. A lot of things were maybe explored. Had a really nice performance in the 2 games by Bryson Goodine, Syracuse transfer who played last year a little bit. Seemed to kind of come out of his shell. A.J. Reeves under the weather, didn't start either game. Justin Minaya started in his spot. But Goodine, I thought, played very well. He made 4 threes in the Northwestern game and just plays really hard. And one of the things that I think tonight, early on in the game, he had a couple of plays where he missed some shots, but he was being aggressive. He's going to the basket, and he's hustling. And that's sort of, I think, been missing a little bit from the wing spot. When Reeves' shot's not falling, he's not really giving a lot more. His defense has picked up a little bit this season, but then he really, I don't know if it was just totally being under the weather or whatever, but he just did not look very good on either end of the floor in this game against Virginia. Also had arguably the dunk of the year already. Nate Watson with that alley-oop from Jared Bynum in the Northwestern game, which was the number 1 play on SportsCenter's top 10.
Bynum up top.
Who knew SportsCenter still had a top 10? Who knew SportsCenter was still a thing? Couldn't tell you last time I watched the old worldwide leader for anything but a game I have to watch, which sounds like did not go very well on ESPN Plus in the Northwestern game. I was there, thankfully. I live pretty close to the Prudential Center, so I was able to go. But it sounds like there was some technical difficulties with the broadcast for the first half of that game. Interestingly, a great opportunity for Friar fans to finally see the benefits of syncing up the radio broadcast with their video feed. Maybe mute the television, get the TuneIn app, or if you're in Rhode Island, put on WPRO. You get John and Joe. It's kind of a nice treat. I really enjoy when Friar TV does the sync-ups later after the game, and you can hear John's call of a certain big moment that maybe the in this case, an ESPN guy didn't really have the context behind to really make it feel like it was the gravity of the play that it was. But the other thing, too, I just hearing from people, saw a couple tweets everybody's pretty thankful for Fox Sports. I don't think that there's ever been a production like we had for this Northwestern game. Not sure how things went on ESPN2 tonight, though. You'd imagine smoother since it's an actual television channel instead of a subscription service. A couple notes from the actual production of the tournament itself. Both nights, they made an announcement. They were doing legends from the different schools. During some of the timeouts on the video board, they put up a little graphic. Providence's was Chris Dunn, which, maybe more of a recent legend, but he's probably still a legend in his own right. Certainly someone that the majority of the fans would know more than, like, Jimmy Walker, for example. And I didn't really notice it as much the first night. I was sitting next to Bill Koch in the Providence Journal, and at one point they made an announcement about Dunn, and they're talking about his accomplishments. And they make I think the last one was, and his 208 steals is the all-time school's record. And I didn't really hear it when they said it. I was kind of looking at my computer, and Bill says, Chris Dunn is the leader in steals at Providence. That doesn't sound right. And I said, no, he's not. There's no way. And Bill was like, yeah, definitely not, because John Linehan is the leader in steals, who also happens to be the leader in steals all-time for the NCAA. So not only did they get it wrong the first night, John Linehan is coaching in this tournament as an assistant at Georgia, but they do it the second night again. So clearly nobody cared to do any research of any kind to know that Dunn's not even first or second in Providence's school history, because Eric Murdoch is right behind Linehan. So, and we're talking Linehan has 385, Chris Dunn 208. So it's like not even close. So that's just one production note. The other one is the press conferences were being held in the press conference room at the Prudential Center, but only via Zoom. Which, I get it. There's a certain amount of, they're trying to accommodate people who aren't there. They're trying to accommodate the coaches to avoid any COVID issues. But if you're going to do that, you have to be able to have it work. And we've been doing Zoom stuff for the last year and a half. So horribly run last night. Really couldn't even hear Ed Cooley. I was trying to listen to it in my car on the way home, and I had to put the volume up all the way. Not great. Tonight, run a lot smoother. Tony Bennett's went really long to start out. Ed Cooley spoke pretty briefly. He was by himself. Didn't bring a player with him. But I think his overall message was that they played pretty well. He was proud of the group. They just didn't shoot well at all. He basically was saying, we made shots last night, we won. We didn't make shots tonight, we lost. And that's true. And Virginia is a big part of that. They are extremely, extremely well coached on defense. Just listening to the questions that Tony Bennett was getting from some of the Virginia press after the game, it's pretty clear that he's been talking about how they're not really there yet on defense, and they have a lot to learn. This is one of his younger/newer teams with all the transfers that are sort of now the new thing in college basketball. And learning a defense like the pack line is very difficult because it requires a lot of communication, and they're supposed to be kind of playing on a string together. And it seemed like this was by far their best effort to date this season, and maybe in a while. Obviously, they had that loss to Navy, and they lost to Houston. But giving up 40 points, Providence shot, I think, 21% from the field, which is one of the guys in my Slack looked it up on KenPom. I believe this is statistically the worst shooting game Providence has ever had in the history of KenPom, so I think that's going back about 20 years. 21% from the field. I was looking at the halftime stats. I think they shot 27% in the first half. And I turned to Bill and I said, they're probably not going to shoot 27% in the second half. So maybe there's a chance they could make a run, get it close, which is kind of what ended up happening, except they didn't shoot better in the second half. They certainly didn't shoot 27%. They shot worse. I think they were 23 for a while, and then 21 for the game. So really staggeringly bad shooting the ball. But on the positive side, in this specific game and then on the overall for the first 6 games of the season, in this particular game, you saw them sort of change the whole thing. Virginia likes to impose their style of their pack line, and they want you to play offense for as much of the full shot clock as they can get you to play offense for. And on the other end, they are constantly moving, cutting, screening, running the ball, handoffs, passes. I mean, nonstop movement. So not only are you having to run your offense for 20, 25 seconds pretty much every time down, you're also having to play really hard, chase your man defense the whole time they have the ball, and they're not taking quick shots. So the net result of all of that is you're getting more tired. You have less possessions to have error, so there's a smaller margin of error, which is usually not good for Providence because they need a little margin of error to dig themselves out of some hole that they've created. In this case, it just wasn't possible tonight. They got it all the way down to 6, and then they scored, I think, 4 points the rest of the game to finish with 40. It was 42-36, and then I think the game ended on a 16-4 run. And then on the overall for the season, 5-1 after 6. I think that's probably not too unexpected in terms of if you looked at the schedule when it came out. And if the one loss was going to be the one loss on a neutral to Virginia, that's probably the best loss to have through 6. You could have said maybe Wisconsin on the road because it's a road game, but getting that road win will be huge. So 5-1 through 6. A couple of close calls against teams that maybe they shouldn't have hung around with, but they won. And that's kind of all that matters. And they'll get a few days off now for the Thanksgiving holiday and pick up action on Saturday the 27th at the Dunkin' Donuts Center against St. Peter's. Should be, hopefully, you'd think, a pretty easy win. 12 p.m. tip. And Ed Cooley get a second chance to get his 200th win as the head coach at Providence College. Friars got their 1500th win in program history against Northwestern on Monday. Cooley's 199th win. So his first shot at 200 was a loss to Virginia. He'll get his next shot against St. Peter's. And then the rest of the way, I mean, probably 3 pretty tricky games still on the schedule as the calendar turns to December. After St. Peter's, you have Texas Tech on December 1st at the Dunkin' Donuts Center. That should be a really, really interesting game as part of the Big East Big 12 battle. Texas Tech not actually ranked in the AP poll right now. They're also receiving votes. I think they were 35th this past week, the November 22nd poll. But Ken Pom has them right now, as I'm recording this tonight, as the 10th team in his ratings. So that should be a really interesting game. Of the remaining games in the non-conference, that is the only one that Ken Pom has Providence losing. And then Saturday, December 4th, the annual in-state rivalry game with URI. That's a 2 p.m. tip at the Dunkin' Donuts Center. And then Vermont, Tuesday, December 7th. So 3 pretty tricky games in a row. Texas Tech, the best of the 3. URI is always, you never know, it's an in-state rivalry game. Could be a war. You hate to see it. They lost 2 of their 3 games in their tournament down in Florida, including a game against Florida Gulf Coast tonight where they were led by 11 at the half. Some interesting end-of-game fouling by them to lose that game by 1.
That's a shame.
And then finally Vermont to close out the difficult game stretch there. That's 3 pretty difficult games to start December. And then the final game, Central Connecticut State on December 11th. That will be the final game before the exam break, where the guys will have about a week off for final exams for the fall semester. And then Big East play begins on December 18th against UConn, so that'll be fun. I'm sure I will speak to everyone before the beginning of Big East play. But really interesting stretch coming up in early December here. But assuming they take care of business on Saturday against St. Peter's, 6-1 November, I think that's probably pretty good. Not sure that would have been totally unexpected. Potentially could have seen maybe even 2 losses with that Wisconsin game on the road. But getting the win there, very helpful for the resume down the line. And then, as I mentioned, just winning the game against Northwestern on a neutral to get Virginia on the neutral, really helpful, even though they didn't win the game against Virginia. That'll still help them on the resume and the numbers in terms of some of the metrics the NCAA tournament committee will be looking for. And I do think that that's sort of where this season is heading. A lot of veteran guys, Still some pieces to put together. Ed Cooley seems pretty set on his rotation in terms of the guys he's willing to play at this point. You're basically seeing the starting five of Jared Bynum and then Al Durham, giving you that lefty-righty combo as a sort of a two-headed point guard situation. And then the three spot had been A.J. Reeves. The last two games, Justin Minaya. Reeves under the weather these last two games in Newark. But as I tweeted during the game, I think that it's very possible that A.J. Reeves' days of being a starter may or may not be numbered. Ed Cooley was sort of asked after the game whether or not he would consider keeping that starting five with Minaya in there over Reeves. And he kind of brushed it off, sort of said, "No, we're still figuring it out, but, it's not impossible. It might be a matchup situation." He kind of danced around it. But unless Reeves produces, I think this is sort of the new Ed Cooley in some ways, and partially because this is the way the college basketball is now with the freedom of moving of players with the transfer portal. I think he's sort of done with the trying to sort of play the nice guy. Certainly with a guy like Reeves, been in the program a long time, has sort of taken tough coaching, but he just hasn't produced at the level that I think has been expected of somebody who is a top 50, top 60 recruit coming out of high school. So I think Ed Cooley's sort of done with trying to make guys feel good about themselves or worry about transfers. Guys are going to transfer no matter what because there's going to be somebody in their ear with an opportunity or they're going to be tampered with. I mean, it just happens. That's just the reality of how the game is, even before the freedom of movement rule changes. I think that was all still going on. It's just now amplified. And pretty much anybody who first-time transfer gets to transfer without sitting out. So that's just going to be the reality that there's probably going to be 2 or 3 guys every year. You also can't play 13. So it looks like Ed Cooley's maybe going to play his 8 guys. So between the 2 point guards of Bynum and Durham, it's going to then be some probably combination of Minaya, Reeves, Horkler, Watson, and then after that, it's been Croswell kind of to spell mostly Watson, but occasionally Horkler. So foul trouble, you might see him a little bit more. No foul trouble, you probably will see him less. Certainly as Big East games probably begin, I think you'll see him less. And then Allen Breed, who I have really liked for the most part. He's still had a couple of moments here and there. He's not the best defender yet, but he really plays hard, and he can shoot the ball. He had a really nice pass in the game against Virginia tonight. So that's a guy that could be a weapon off the bench and maybe eventually into that like Malik White microwave off the bench scoring guy. And now you're seeing a little bit of Bryson Goodine getting into the mix the last couple games, playing really well, and I think earning some more minutes. We'll see how that plays out over the next few weeks as we get closer to Big East play. But that's sort of probably the extent of what the rotation will be. You got your 5 starters, and then of the 4 guys that are coming off the bench, you probably see maybe one of those guys kind of his minutes sort of dwindle, and Cooley's probably playing 7 or 8 guys. In reality, once the Big East play kind of gets going, and you saw tonight as an example, this is something that has been pretty typical of Ed Cooley teams, especially because they do seem to be in these positions where they dig themselves a hole to get out of, that they have to come back, storm back from some double-digit deficit, and he tends to kind of ride the guys that got him there. So you saw sort of the same 5 or 6 guys on the floor the entire time they were making that run. They were pressing, they were trapping, they were running on offense, trying to get quicker, faster opportunities in a more chaotic setting. And that's great, and that's something that Cooley has done before, and sometimes it works, but in this case it's pretty clear the guys just got really tired. So, it's Cooley would prefer to play a pretty tight rotation. I think he will play 7 or 8 guys, and depending on matchups versus certain teams, you might see a little bit more or less of certain guys. But all in all, pretty good November. Probably going to be 6-1, assuming they take care of business against St. Peter's. And then we're looking ahead to a pretty entertaining December with those 3 games to start, and then league play on the horizon less than a month from now. So everybody have a really, really happy Thanksgiving. Be very thankful that we can hopefully, a lot of you people are gathering this year if you didn't gather last year. Be nice to get back into everyone's company in real life and off the Zooms. So very thankful for another Thanksgiving with family and friends. And I will talk to everyone soon.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Providence Friarcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts.
Follow Mike Hopkins on Twitter and Instagram.
At PCBB 1917. Like the Facebook page, and as always, stay classy, Friartown.